Here we go. Leafs, Sens, for the second time in 3 nights, and then for 3 times in 4 nights tomorrow night. After the 5-1 lead that turned into the 6-5 overtime loss debacle that happened 2 days ago, the Leafs came out and played a much stouter defensive game tonight. Now, it didn't start well, though. The first period was kind of a low chance period. I think the shots in the end were only, maybe 7-3 or 8-4 or something. Like, there weren't a lot of shots in the first period, but Ottawa definitely outshot the Leafs, and I thought had a definite edge in play over that first period. The Leafs didn't really have a good start, but then as the second period got the first few minutes of the second, they finally started to get things going and started to take over a bit, and then continued that through the third. So in the end, the shots were dead even in this game at 28 apiece. Ottawa had more hits, Leafs had more face-off wins. Both power plays went over 3, which is unusual for there to be no power play goals in a Leafs game. They looked a little disjointed on the power play, actually, to be honest, tonight. But they did come away with a 2-1 win. It was an interesting game. Also kind of a boring game. Defensive games are more boring because there's just not a lot of goals. But it's the type of hockey that wins you playoff games. So it's a style that I don't mind seeing them play because they need to learn how to play it. The Leafs got on the board first in the second period. Somewhere in the first half of the period, they were controlling it in the Ottawa zone, and it came back to Justin Hall at the right point, and he kind of was creeping in a bit, and then just definitely shipped a nice little pass off to the right side down low to Matthews, who was parked there for the one-timer, and from a sharper angle he blasted one past Matt Murray to make it 1-0. And later in the second, with just over a minute to play, the Senators would strike back and tie things up at 1 on a goal by the other idiot Kachuk. And in the third period, the Leafs got on the board just over the halfway point through the period, and it was it was a funny goal because the Leafs were working it around the zone. They had possession of it for a little while. Came back to, I think, Muzzin at the right point, and he let a shot go on net, and Joe Thornton was in front jostling with one of the Ottawa defensemen, causing a ruckus, and the puck went into that fray. I don't know if it got through to the goalie or not, or hit one of those two guys, but it came over to the left side of the net for Kerfoot, who kind of dug it out and then chipped a nice little shot past Murray, but it bounced off his helmet and then off his post and then off his pad and then in, right? It was kind of a plinko shot, and fortunately took the right bounces, not just bounce, but bounces, and found the back of the net, and that's the way it would end. Ottawa would pull their goalie late in the game, but the Leafs did a good job of not really giving them much to work with and keeping them turned back. So, like I said, it was a much better defensive effort, but in the early going, they had to rely on Fred a little bit just to keep them in the game until they could find their legs and get their mojo going, which they did fairly early in the second period, and then from that point, I would say, dictated the game more so than the Sens did. So nice to see that victory after what happened the previous game. The top line is still playing really well. Joe Thornton actually had 2 goals called back in this game. The first one was like a rebound or something that went into Matt Murray's right pad, and it was loose, and Joe was kind of he was pushing at the puck, and then he got pushed from behind by an Ottawa defenseman, and he pushed the goalie right into the net, so the puck went over the line, but they called it back. So I'm not sure what the exact ruling is on such a situation, but in this instance, they called it back. And I think that was at some point later in the first period that happened. And then in the second period, it happened right before the Matthews goal. He was standing in front, and a point shot hit an Ottawa stick near the blue line and rose up, and Thornton lifted up his stick and got a piece of it and tipped it down through the legs of Murray and went in. So, and that one was called back. Now this one I'm not so sure of, because there's 2 aspects of this rule that I would need to know before I make a definitive ruling on that non-goal. When a goal is tipped in with a high stick, I'm not sure anymore whether it's the stick can be a maximum of the height of the crossbar of the net, or if it's the player's shoulder. It's gone back and forth. They've changed that rule, so I'm not sure where it stands right now. And the other one is, does it matter where the puck hits the stick? Because this one hit it more or higher, I guess, on the shaft, more in towards his gloves, where the stick was lower rather than the blade, which was a little higher, right? So depending on what the answers would be to those two questions, I would be able to make more of a decision. But either way, they called it back. And so Joe had 2 goals taken away from him. And fortunately, it didn't cost them in the end because they still won. But yeah, I thought that was kind of funny, get a goal called back, but the guy gets 2 called back in one game. Like, that's pretty rare that would happen. But yeah, otherwise, I think the top line is really putting in a lot of good work. The second line has gone cold. Tavares doesn't look like his normal self. He looks kind of out of sync or something. I mentioned last game he was making passes to nobody in particular or right to the other team, and he wasn't that bad tonight, but he still looked like he was having a bit of trouble. So, and then Nylander hasn't scored in a while, and but Hyman's always putting in the work, so you never have to worry about him. But yeah, they really need that second line to get going again. And then the third and fourth lines, you don't expect much scoring from. So, Kerfoot got a goal tonight, which is nice. But it would be nice if both of those lines could get a little more mojo going. But otherwise, they provide good shifts with a lot of energy and a lot of zone time here and there. So, yeah, so overall, big victory. And nice to get on the board for that last game. And the interesting question going forward now is, now that they have a back-to-back situation, will Freddie get the net again tomorrow night, or will they take a chance on Hutch? Because I believe Hutch was treated unfairly in his first Leaf stint because he got thrown to the Wolves on the back end of back-to-backs when the team was playing shitty because of the whole Mike Babcock situation. And he was basically run out of town after that. And I don't feel as though he was deserving of that, right? So, but I've heard people in the sports media saying the Leafs are going to absolutely do everything they can to not play Hutchison, because although they have him in their organization and he's their backup because Campbell's hurt, they don't believe in him being able to win a game for them or whatever, right? So, which is kind of funny seeing as he's their backup goalie right now. But I'm very interested to see if he gets the start tomorrow night, and or not, and if he does, to see how he plays and manages in that game. So that will be what I'm looking forward to most tomorrow night, to see how that situation plays out. But either way, let's hope for another good defensive effort. But a few more goals. Let's have a 5-1 game instead of a 2-1 game. And oh yeah, don't let them come back on that 5-1 game. So until tomorrow night, so long.